recorder's on. All right, so the French Revolution figures into some of what we're going to be looking at, sort of. It's really hard to see in like the furniture and like some of like the interior stuff that a democratic revolution took place, because so we got Louis XIV built up the wealth of France, a lot of conquest, sponsored a lot of workshops to create, a lot of like the furnishings and luxuries that were created in the workshops at the Louvre, at places like Le Gobelin, Savonnerie. Those were they were meant not just to provide the best furnishings, but they were also really meant to promote the nation as the place where this stuff comes from and the place where the best things are made. So it is almost like similar to the way the Italian Baroque promoted the Catholic Church, and the French Baroque promoted France and Louis XIV. So that's just kind of like the tradition that they're working on, or working with. So Louis XV, that follows Louis XIV, kind of coasts, and you get this late Baroque or the Rococo style, which is the more playful, asymmetrical, organic. It's really almost like they took this like more formalized Baroque and put a little more art into it. So the Rococo is more artistic. Louis XVI follows, and he's the last French monarch before the French Revolution. And what happens to Louis XVI during the French Revolution?
He dies, maybe.
They behead him.
That's what the guillotine is for. He and Marie Antoinette, who was the queen, they were arrested. They were arrested, held in jail. Oh my God, my neighborhood! Just a second. Oh boy, I like where I live, but it gets loud. Probably somebody walking by yelling in my window soon. Okay. So we'll get to some of the like furniture and stuff in a little bit here. So the Louis XVI was captured. He was arrested and held for 4 months before he was executed publicly by the revolutionaries. And this was really like it was a democratic revolution, in the sense that like the French government had a lot of money and they spent it on largely on themselves, and left the people who were, I guess, like just about everybody else had to make do with what they could. Led to a lot of anger. This goes back to the time of Louis XIV and before Louis XIV, that the lower classes, people that lived in poverty, people that did service work, what we would call service work now. These people just got more and more angry as they got less and less, and had to just like make do with less and less. And so it was already the climate was already ready. When Louis XIV Louis XVI approved sending French military forces to assist in the American Revolution, and the money that they spent on that, from what I understand, was like kind of like the last straw where France just ran out of money. They just like would blow their money on foreign policy, on luxuries, and so um, he called like this like National Assembly, I think it was, and pretty much they just turned on him, and so that was the end. That was the end for him. So we'll look at some of like the neoclassical furnishings, interiors that are really kind of like attributed to his that sort of happened during his reign. There was a very brief and violent period of the revolutionaries, the Jacobins, that rounded up royals, anyone who was like like an aristocrat, so anyone associated with monarchy, um, and killed a lot of them. Then there was this like period afterward called the directorate, or in French it's directoire, and you'll see there is such a thing as director or directorate style furnishings, which is still neoclassical, but it's kind of like this, almost like they were trying to restore order. Um, and then after the directorate or directoire furniture, you have empire style that was sponsored by Napoleon, because Napoleon like launched a coup d'état and took over the French government. He was a successful general fighting wars for everyone before him, and he just decided, well, the this is a good time. I'm going to stage a coup, and he did, and he was successful, and he made himself emperor again. So the French Revolution was very quick. Eventually, monarchy comes back, and then eventually sort of fades out by the end of the 19th century. Um, so it's there's a lot. So you'll see like neoclassical, directoire, empire, and in some cases they don't look terribly different. We'll look at some of like what they are and what some of the differences are. It's like with Napoleon and the empire style, which is the very end of the 18th and then the beginning of the 19th century, you see a lot of Roman and Egyptian motifs combined in the empire style. And the Egyptian is more of like a Napoleonic thing, because that, as I think I mentioned last week, the French and the English were fighting over who would have control of the Eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, Suez Canal. Everyone, when they wanted to, I remember when they built this, when they built the Suez Canal. But before it was dug, they were fighting over who would get that spot, because they knew it was the best spot to put a canal to connect Asia and Europe. Otherwise, you got to sail around Africa. So, in the process of of the English and the French fighting, they came into contact with some with Egyptian antiquities, and both, the English and the French became very enamored of Egypt. So, also Greece, Rome, Egypt. The Europeans consider themselves to be the heirs to those cultures, and especially at this time, they really felt like we are like, everybody always wanted to be the next Rome. Rome has always been big in the European mindset, and that was something that Napoleon fancied himself to be, like a new Roman emperor in some respects. Adolf Hitler did the same thing in the 20th century. He was going to build Berlin once they, finished beating everybody in World War II. He had a model where they built this big architectural scale model of Berlin with all of the new buildings that were very Roman, that they were going to build in Berlin once they were all done fighting. And it was Rome. So Rome they got Rome on the brain, and it was considered to be a great civilization, a very vast civilization, Um, if you are focused on conquest, then that's a that's I guess that's probably a really good model to have. They always leave out the part about how Rome fell apart. Um, Apparently, they don't think it's going to happen to them, but you know, Napoleon learned, and Hitler never quite got there. So okay, any questions? All right, Louis the 16th. Where are my stronger glasses? All right, so from the Abrams Guide, as its name suggests, Neoclassicism marked a return to the traditions of the past and the search for a more refined and enduring style than the undisciplined and frivolous Rococo. In its rationality, it was influenced by the intellects of the Enlightenment, but its more immediate impetus was the excavation of ancient ruins at Pompeii and Herculaneum in Italy. Beginning in the mid-18th century, these widely published findings became a rich source of inspiration for architects and designers, motivating a dramatic turnaround of style in France, and a simultaneous one in England, which we saw some of last week. Coming into its own after some years of transition when the Rococo mingled with the incoming style, the early phase of French neoclassicism combined the best features of Baroque and Rococo. It balanced the richness and symmetry of one with the grace and delicacy of the other, and considering its merits, should have stayed fashionable for several decades. To its misfortune, it coincided with the reign of Louis XVI, 1774 to 1789, by whose name it is also known. So they're interchangeable, Louis XVI and French neoclassicism. As politics intruded on fashion, the association of design and patronage with the monarchy ensured its downfall. When the French Revolution of 1789 dethroned Louis and his much maligned queen, Marie Antoinette, the style that marked the era was discarded with the royals in their court. The palaces and mansions were sacked or destroyed, and the trappings of wealth were disdained as unsuitable for the new proletariat. French design, however, would reassert itself under the rule of Napoleon. Having avoided the excesses of its predecessor, the neoclassicism of the mid-18th century influenced design changes in many other countries, becoming the first of many revivals of styles tracing back to ancient Greece and Rome. There. A little bit of intro for you. Of course, you should read this yourself. I just read almost one page. There's two. Yeah, about 2.5 pages left there. It'll take you any time at all to learn a bit more about that. Interesting style. Okay. So here, what we're going to do is I'm going to share the screen. There it is. So they updated WebEx and they changed the menu. It's kind of hard to see it. All right. Da-da. Mama. There you go. Okay. A painting from the later part of the 18th century with what is a staged yet informal French interior. Okay, so this is on the grounds of Versailles, Petit Trianon, which was the residence of Marie Antoinette. Oh, Mama. Oh, this was Madame de Pompadour's originally. All right, so this you can see the style of fauteuil with the upholstery and wood with this kind of like cylindrical drum shape of leg, which looks a little bit like a column. Architectural elements with the scroll. This like the end of the arm is a scroll, and this is a scroll, those are things that are used in Baroque and Rococo. But you can see this. The boiserie is the paneling on the walls, and it has almost like this like Roman um, rinceau and grotesquerie. That's sort of like this ornament with the garland and the vines. A little hard to see some of it. It looks like there's like a symbolic little urn in the middle of that panel.
Was it normal to have mirrors behind furniture?
So this is one of the I guess like the uses of mirrors to make the space look bigger. And it was yes, I don't know how common, but it's here.
Okay.
But it's similar to the way a mirror, like a console, would have a mirror mounted to the wall above it, um, so that it would like sort of like make it seem like there's like depth in that space.
Right.
And you can also so you can see like a double of the console table and everything on it.
Thank you.
I don't know how common it was to do this, where like you would sit there and you'd see like the back of a person's head. Um, but definitely done to expand space. Okay, so here are some French chairs. So these are that like the so the chair on the left, number one, is to me a little more like the Louis XV style of fauteuil, and the number two, that is more the style of Louis XVI with the circular back. When you look at there's the Philippe Starck Louis Ghost chair, which is it's like it's a chair that's all acrylic, and I think the first one that he made was just clear acrylic, and it's meant to look like a Louis XVI armchair or fauteuil, and it's much simpler, and it has the circular back, and the side chair. Um, this is also a style with this kind of like a flared back with the wooden frame and upholstered cushion on the back. And, well, no, there we go. Yeah, so you have these little, these finials on the back of the side chair. And what really looks like you have, so there is a column. This is like an ionic column right here. If you look at this and you see ionic column, this has this sort of like twist that that was sort of like a stylistic thing that goes like to this Baroque, like the sort of like the Baroque resuscitation of the Solomonic column, which has this sort of twist to it. That like the architecture, all this like there's classical architecture as a part of that chair's design. The the number 1, you see this is like the cabriole leg that bends out and then back. And again, this one looks more like it's like earlier Louis XV than Louis XVI. And this is, you'll see this like number 3, you'll see that style of chair with Napoleon's Empire style too. Okay, so as this text mentions, the there was a fascination with Greek and Roman ruins, but also Greek and Roman design, and it does go back to this is when the excavations of Pompeii and Herculaneum begin, and so they really, they always knew there was something there, but they didn't know what, and they started digging it up, and they started to find out that it was remarkably well preserved. And apparently there were some architects like where they would like create these like rooms with either relics or ruins in it. Okay, so here, this to me is very much like the English neoclassicism. With you see this little like panel here with like the grotesquerie with like the stacked images of the sort of goddess figure, vines, urn, little medallion, looks like an Amorini, and then another like cartouche kind of a thing, a wreath at the top with the garland. This is all very Roman, and you see it in Roman, you see it in Renaissance, you see it in the Neoclassical, and mirrors galore. Mirrors do a lot. Mirrors do like expand the space. They do help to reflect light back into the space, so there's like they bounce light around. And it was also something that was like a technology that the French were getting better and better at, where they could make bigger and bigger mirrors, and they liked to show off what they were capable of doing. Mirrors were expensive, so a lot of this is showing off. A lot of this is done to show off wealth. So here, this is English Neoclassicism, Robert Adam Etruscan Room at Osterley Park. Etruscan is a pre-Roman civilization on the Italian peninsula. Tuscany in northwestern Italy, that's named for the Etruscans. That's where the Etruscans were. They reached its height around 500 BCE, which is contemporary with the Greeks, not as developed as the Greeks, but they also influenced the Romans. So this is some Roman stucco decoration from the 2nd century. So if you look at this stucco, Elliot has like arrived. This is like okay, so check out this. So the Roman stucco, go back there and there. So what you get with this, these, as I said last week, these are like the French and English neoclassicism is like an updated version, and a lot of it's Roman because Rome was what they had. Like they had like when they got into Pompeii, they could see entire houses that were Roman, an entire they could see how the Romans did it. Okay, so here we have some furniture designers associated with the style. Georges Jacob. And here, this is for a yeah. So this is a commission for a royal patron. How about that window treatment down around the bottom? That's fancy. Yeah, that's I like the that takes the like skirt. That's like a formal gown for this chair instead of a skirt. Um, Gaudy. So this 1777. This is when like the French monarchy was really in trouble, but they didn't quite know it yet, and they're doing stuff like this while they were running out of money. I guess they're paying for this. So here, Louis the 16th, very this is like fit for literally fit for the king. Um, it's like looks kind of like I don't know. It's like a that gilding on the side is impressive. Yeah, I mean red and gold is a nice color scheme. It looks quite beautiful. But here where you have this like in this like the most neoclassical element that is obvious is this like little like section of rinceau, which is this really delicate flowing pattern that looks like a vine growing with leaves and things coming off of it. And normally you see the rinceau as an alternating pattern in like a border of something. And here it's just one great big sweeping curve, and it's the so like a very dominant element in it. Another Georges Jacob Herculaneum chair. So Herculaneum was another a Roman city that was near Pompeii, that was also destroyed when Mount Vesuvius erupted. But Herculaneum got the lava flow, where Pompeii got the volcanic rock and ash. And so Herculaneum has always been more difficult to excavate because that lava hardened and is a lot harder to remove. So it has so the the thing about this, this has a lot of Greek elements in it, like the palmette, and like this, to me this one has always seemed like it's as Greek as it is Roman. All right, and this is 1795. So this is after this is like the like um, in the period of the directorate, right around the time Napoleon, like this is like Napoleon is about to do his coup d'état. This looks to me this chair has always looked more like it could fit into the Empire style of Napoleon, um, but it has this Roman little like the Roman Amorini on the back. Nice upholstery on the cushion. Much like simpler. It has more like Egyptian elements. Like these look kind of like elements from a lotus, but also very like unique. And in some of these you get elements that are more modern, and they don't like they can't really be specifically tied to Greek, Roman, or Egyptian. Okay, this has the simple, like the saber leg. They did this with a lot of their furniture, where they were using that saber leg from the klezmos in some way. The Biedermeier style that I'll talk about later also has it. Here, a cabinet for Marie Antoinette, the ill-fated Marie Antoinette. All right, and these, yeah, so there's the, this is Brunelleschi back in the Renaissance at his Hospital of the Innocents, these like figures with this kind of like a medallion with a blue background and a achromatic white figure. I don't know who those are, unfortunately. I think I have known it, but I can't remember who those figures are meant to be. Printed silks. Again, more stucco. So this is, again, this is more like these first two especially are more like variations on Roman ornament, like more Roman decorative style. And here, a contemporary image of a French interior. And as I like to do, I like you to see some artwork that shows you like at the time that this was made, it was a contemporary image. So you see the way this is lit with candle, like a wall sconce for candles and a pendant light for candles, and you have the very Roman garland of flowers on the wall. And interiors at night would be pretty dark. Okay. All right, Empire style, 1804, 18, so yeah, beginning of the 19th century. So slowly getting closer and closer to the present day. So Napoleon Bonaparte, he was a French general, and he overthrew the French government because it was chaotic, and the directorate was sort of reestablished to try to bring order and like some like more rational leadership rather than just saying we're going to kill everyone that opposes us. Um, so Napoleon was also about conquest. Does anyone know anything about what Napoleon Bonaparte did in terms of warfare?
I know he like helped overthrow the Haitian Revolution.
Hmm, that I didn't know.
And I think um he was a big part of like the slave trade between, Africa and the Caribbean.
Yeah, well, so the French, the English and French, and I guess sort of like in a more like the most recent before like those countries outlawed it. They were very just as it was in the United States. They were definitely involved in enslaving Africans and sending them to the Americas, or holding them as slaves in Europe. Um, so and that was kind of like a like accepted just policy that was kind of what everybody was doing. Um, and it's so that's one. So that one thing that the French were involved in, definitely. Napoleon's idea of, like, had this idea to dominate Europe, and so he, like, in fighting wars with the Prussians, which are like the northeastern Germans, the German, like, the map of Europe was, like, especially Central Europe, was very different than it is now. Um, he fought, so he conquered pretty much everybody between France and Russia, and then decided to invade Russia, which, as anyone who's ever decided to invade Russia in the winter will know this. It's a bad idea. It led to sort of like this first real defeat was trying to invade Russia and getting repelled largely by winter. Like, Russian winters don't mess around, and if you try to take your army from France um, into Russia, supply lines get stretched really thin, and it takes a long time to get supplies from one place to another, and so it didn't work. Eventually, Napoleon was defeated. The English were the ones that finally, like, ended up defeating, capturing, and at first exiling him, and then he returned, and they had one final battle before they finally beat Napoleon. So, because conquest was important to Napoleon, he had this style of empire style that was really he pretty much just reestablished a lot of the, like, traditions of the monarchy. That the style was meant to promote his brand. They didn't put it that way in those days, but empire style was meant to promote Napoleon's brand, which was the French brand, and that is the brand of the victor and the conqueror. And the Napoleonic Empire style becomes popular in other parts of Europe, like in Austria, southern Germany, especially in those places, also in Italy. And the one of the things that is very, like, I guess is obvious, Roman and Egyptian. So this bedchamber, this is a lectus. This is pretty much a straight up Roman lectus couch. So this is a library in Pompeian style. So Josephine was the queen, the empress, alongside Napoleon. So this has, to me, this is a more modern interior than we've seen. Much more graphical and simple. And here, this is that style, like that, similar to that Georges Jacob Herculaneum chair, with this almost like this sort of like diamond-shaped pattern on the back of this fauteuil. The Emperor's reception room. So if you see, like, here's his throne up on a dais, raised up on these steps. The ployant or tabourets for others to sit on. These are really like Roman battle standards, with the eagle, wreath, and the N for Napoleon. And how's about that chandelier? That's something. So, the French Revolution didn't last long this time. There were other like they eventually, got it back by the end of the 19th century. But this is what like the French Revolution didn't like like a few years after, 15 years after the French Revolution, you've got this.
So I have a question about those chandeliers.
Yeah,
Are those just strictly for decoration, or do they actually have like candles
they have candles.
that they light?
Those are candle
Okay.
powered. Yep.
So were there a lot of fires around that time?
Oh yeah. Fire
Okay.
lighting was a fire hazard in general
Yeah.
because it's like got a bunch of little fires all over your house and yeah, and in this is like what this is 1804. This is right around the time where where the first electrical lights are invented. They're arc lights, and they're meant for use outdoors to light outdoor spaces. And it's really not until the end of the 19th century that you get interior lighting that is really useful. And
Thank you.
even in the early days of electrical lighting, there was a back and forth like battle between gas light and electrical. And both, especially at that time, had their hazards because with a gas light, you had to run gas lines through your house and have like a wall sconce with a gas, like a little like like the luminaire had a little dial on it, and you'd open up the gas, light it, and it would have a gas flame. Your home smelled like gas because you're burning gas for lighting. But I guess you do that for modern because it's modern. But but still, it's fire, and electricity was not like not nearly what it is now. Like very low voltage. Electrical lighting in the early days was not very bright. It was better than nothing, but it was like 25, like a 25-watt bulb. Like if you think like an old incandescent bulb that's 25 watts, it's really weak. That was probably about as bright as interior lighting was at the beginning for electrical. So yes, big. This is like in today's terms, that's a big fire hazard, no doubt about it. But that's like especially here, you had attendants to watch that, and if there was ever a fire, then of course the attendant is responsible. Not that it's really risky lighting. All right, so here, Roman. So you don't need to know necessarily need to know all the details of this is Empress Josephine's bedroom at at one of the residences, but you see this very Roman design. This small this is has like a water basin in it. Owes a lot to this table, which also looks like it has possibly has a water basin in it from Pompeii. So if you see that, and then look at that right here, it's right. This is like a modern version of that. It's got the sphinxes. It's got the animal leg. This one has looks like there's like an urn. Looks like it's like maybe for like wastewater or something like that. This could be like this is a basin with a drain in it and it goes down there, and then you can dump that. This I guess this is like their backyard event porch or something. I love this, like, um, man, yeah, it looks like the inside of a tent. Um,
Was everything draped in fabric?
yeah,
Ceilings and
yes, yes, it's I mean, similar. Does anybody? I don't know. Some of you might remember the 1970s. Um, it was fashionable in the 1970s to use patterned wallpaper, and it was
we
also,
had that when I was a kid.
yeah, and it was also fashionable. Some people would just like go an extra step and wallpaper this. They would paper over the ceiling, and that was like I've seen some like there are some great photos of just like some nutty like plaid wallpaper that goes up the wall over the ceiling, and then they have the same plaid in the carpet, like wall to wall carpet that's just like crazy plaid, and then the wall everything is like you can't even see where you're at. Like it's disorienting, but it's cool. So yeah, so it's like I guess in a way it's like you can it's a um, it's flexible. I mean, you can take this, you can like remove the fabric and put some new fabric down without having to like strip wallpaper or I don't know if that's the reason. I mean, it's kind of thing where they like you decide, especially if you are the French emperor, you can decide I want fabric. I want to have like the ceiling in this striped fabric. Like whatever you say, right? So like this stool here has this kind of like the X-ish frame, the sort of like almost like this sort of like two half circles. And this is like an ancient that's an ancient design. That's a little bit like the like the I think the Stella Carillus took many forms. That does not look foldable, but it definitely that's a classic. That's neoclassicism right there. And there is a chandelier without the candles, but you see how many candle holders there are, and they needed it. So here, very Greek, like Greek revival, or I guess if it's like Empire style, then it's like this is an Empire style base that owes a lot to Greek, but that heightened realism. If Greek sculpture could be painted, like if the Greeks had the ability to paint the way they made sculpture, they would have probably painted like this. But you see this Greek fret down here, or the meander, the palmette, this sort of like honeysuckle medallion, the Greek wave. All this has just got a bunch of different Greek designs on it. And this is the Imperial Manufactory at Sèvres. This is like one that like Louis the 14th set up. So a bergère in Empire style. This really big, like hefty cushion, and and a lot of just like some like Roman, really like Roman decorative ornament. It has this kind of bracket. Oops, this bracket up here. The next chair here, this one, this side chair. This is yeah, I guess this is earlier. This is maybe a little bit out of place. This chair has this. So like bundle. Like you see this, like it looks like it's a bundle of rods, and then there's this like crossed golden, like almost like a strap kind of binding it right there. Um, that's a Roman. It looks like Egyptian reading, but in the Romans had a thing um, called a fascia, and it was a symbol that was a bundle of rods tied together around an axe, and it was a military symbol. And so this sort of like you see sometimes this like with Roman design, what looks like this like bundle of rods, kind of like bound by something. Um, and the reason that in the 20th century, the reason that we have the term fascist is because Mussolini used that symbol for his political and so like very authoritarian political movement. And so they were in Italy. Mussolini and his people were called the fascists because they used that symbol. That's why we not the modern term of fascist refers to Mussolini, who was like he wanted to be like Hitler, but he wasn't. They didn't have this. They didn't. He just didn't have. You know, Italy was not as strong as Germany, so which is good because they had a lot of bad ideas. So anyway, but there also are like parts of like architecture called fascia, like around windows. So you'll find that stuff too. All right, a little bit about neoclassicism in the brand new U.S. of A. So Thomas Jefferson, he was a big guy in politics and also in promoting ideas of the Enlightenment, and this idea that this idea of like democracy, which was limited democracy. It was white men that held property had rights, not anybody else. Slowly, we have been chipping away at that and getting more rights for more people. But it was a big break from a monarchy. They broke away from the English monarchy. They were originally in colonies of England, and if you know a little bit about the story of the American Revolution, one of the issues was overtaxation, where the English crown just kept saying like, well, we need more money, so we're just going to tax you more. And the colonists said, we have no representation. You're just doing whatever you want, and we harvest these trees, and then you just take them all. And we want you just tax us to death. So that was sort of like one of the reasons. So Jefferson was very much involved in the ideas of the the rediscovery of Greece, Rome, ideas about democracy and representative government. And so the neoclassicism was something that was very dear to him and to others of the people that created the first government in the United States. And so this is Virginia State Capitol, which is a variation on a Roman temple. So, and going back to the ancient world and the ancient Greeks, their democracy was the same. Like only certain men with property had rights to have a voice in governing. And political debate was not any different. Apparently, so the Socratic method was tear down your enemy first. You like make your enemy like make a you know the get the crowd on your side and make your opponent look bad. That's like more like the reality of what like Greek political debate was about. So ideas about like the like more like pure democracy and total fantasy. All right, this is a Roman temple, present day France, and da 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 da. Stairs on the side though, shaking it up. Monticello, which is his estate that he designed. The Pantheon, Monticello. Floor plan. Indian Hall. So, the First Nations, or the nations of that were living in the Americas before the Europeans got here, or Indians as they've been called for a long time. It was more a novelty to the Europeans. The Europeans took what they wanted, and this is calling like Indian Hall. My entire time studying history, this a lot of aspects of America, like just like any history that, especially American history, that it's the truth about the nation that, sort of mowed down people that were in the way, or enslaved people to get what we wanted. That's, I think you can't separate that from Jefferson's legacy, but if we're looking at interiors and we're looking at like what his role is in sort of promoting neoclassicism, you can see it in here. This ornament up here, like these exaggerated dentils, which are the little like rectangular detail on a Greek temple, and this really big corbel right here beneath the this mezzanine. This is not structural. That's not holding anything up. That's ornamental. But you see these like chairs, but you even see like here these chairs with these like really thin spindles. That was like it seemed like that was like a colonial, like this this simpler colonial design with a lot like furniture, these like thin spindles, like a Windsor chair. Really uncomfortable unless you've got some, pillows or cushions to throw down on them. This is weirdly modern looking. I love those oval windows. And you see the Roman ornament above. And the bed in like that little section, little enclosed section. I kind of like that. I hope you can go around to that other room rather than having to crawl over the bed. Probably can. That would be a oops design element. Study. So you see this sort of like it's kind of like this like curved, like it looks like the high boy with like they've got the big broken pediment with the urn finial. right up in here. Yeah, but you know, the furnishings are going to be simpler in the the early United States. Much simpler. They didn't have a monarch to make it for. They had upper class, like especially in a place like Boston, um, but they didn't have a monarchy driving this like demand for luxury items. So, and it was, as far as Europeans were concerned, it was a lot of wilderness, and so their towns and cities and farms were more, like, especially in the late 18th, early 19th century, they were really more, um, they were much more isolated. It's hard to imagine now what that would have, looked like. So, all right. So what I would want you to have from this little bit here, that in the United States we do have a link to that European neoclassicism through someone like Jefferson. Not completely. The furnishings are not, but the architecture is. Okay. We're going to have a break here. Stop the recording.